Hiya! So, welcome to this author interview. I'm Olivia, and today I'm being joined by now published author Isabella Stofka. I mean, how amazing is that?
It doesn't feel real yet, to be honest, but I'm just waiting for it to crash fully in.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. So at the time of this recording, Curses of Lavender literally came out on Tuesday, the 25th of March. I mean, that's quite scary. I mean, I know I've only been sort of working with you since like November, but like feels so sudden. Even though it's been like a long time coming, it feels so sudden. So
Yeah.
so obviously huge congratulations on that.
Thank
It
you.
must be incredible. But for those who don't know you yet, would you like to do like a little introduction about yourself? Like let the people know
Sure.
stuff?
So my name is Isabella Stofka, but everyone calls me Bella, so please go ahead, call me Bella. And I am the now officially published debut author of Curses of Lavender, which is a young adult fantasy novel loosely based on the classic fairy tale Sleeping Beauty.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. So you kind of like led me quite well into like my sort of introductory question, which is kind of a typical one, but I thought it's worth asking anyway. How did you get inspiration for the book? Because I know it's a retelling, but was it something that you felt that was sort of missing from the original, or was it something that you just like wanted to explore a bit more?
Yeah, so it's funny. I love fairy tale retellings. Like one of my favorites are like Cinder by Marissa Meyer. Like I love the spin she put on those, and I've always been drawn to fairy tale retellings. But I never really sought out to write one. I was just kind of in my phase where I had just kind of started dabbling in writing, and I liked the idea of getting ideas more than I actually liked like like finishing a book. So I would just like getting idea after idea after idea. And one idea I had on a car trip was I don't know, I was feeling like writing prompts and I saw this picture of a door. And I don't want to give myself too much credit if it's not due, but I don't know if I saw the prompt on the picture or if I had a thought myself. But basically, the thought that inspired the story was, what if someone went through a door in their dreams and woke up? And immediately I was like, whoa, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And one thing I like to do is attribute a lot of my works to like retellings or mythologies because I'm really into mythology. I'm really into fairy tale retellings. And I feel like when you're starting out with a story, there's so much you have to come up with and have to explore. And sometimes you can have like a very big idea, like someone going through a door in their dreams and waking up, but it's really hard to like latch on to more details to then expand upon. So one study place I like to look at is like fairy tale retellings and mythology. And I was like, what fairy tale retelling or mythology would lend itself well? And my initial thought was Sleeping Beauty, which is kind of funny because I never really watched Sleeping Beauty when I was little. Like, of course, I'm like obsessed with it now because of the book and everything. But I thought it might be kind of fun to explore that because I've seen a lot of retellings for Sleeping Beauty, but actually not even a lot. I've just seen a few, but none of them have ever had her save herself. Usually it's like a spin on like she's in the dream world or she's doing other things, but I've never seen one like actually save herself. And I was like, what if instead of the prince waking her up, she went through a door in her dreams and that's how she woke up, and that's how the whole story started to spiral.
That is so cool. Yeah. I mean, when I read it, I have to admit, like, it was very different to how I imagined it, even though obviously I've worked alongside you sort of since November. Obviously not since the beginning. But when I went into it, I obviously knew these sort of things, but when I actually read it, it wasn't how I expected it. Because, like you said, there's so many sort of retellings that kind of follow a very similar route. And I feel like this went very differently to how I expected, and I loved that.
Oh
I
yeah.
was so I was so immersed, like from the beginning, because you're sort of thrown into this real world that then turns out isn't the real world.
Mhm.
So I thought that that was such an interesting sort of way to prop up your story. And yeah, I was just like blown away. I mean, that's crazy. Were there sort of points in where you were creating the story or writing the story that you didn't really know how to continue? Like, because obviously it's sort of such a departure from the original story. Were there sort of points where you faced like writer's block and stuff like that? And how did you sort of overcome it to then obviously finish the story and it being published?
I had a lot of instances of writer's block. So like I said, I had a lot of ideas and I kind of jumped between a lot of them. So I was working on my first original story and then I got this idea and I started working on this one, but then I got another idea, so I ditched this one for the other one, then I would kind of go between the two of them. And then it was really I don't know, it just I kept writing and then I would stop and I would keep writing and I would stop. And I feel like when I was younger, like in high school, you can really afford to do that just because um I don't know, I feel like you have a lot more time and everything, and you should be a kid. You should be able to kind of like live your life and have some lazy days and everything. So I really took those for granted and I just stopped working on something sometimes when I wasn't feeling it. So that was definitely a time I had writer's block. But then when I really committed to writing this book, I think the summer before my senior year, I was like, I wanna be a published author very soon because I don't know, the thought of doing anything but writing was just like I couldn't even like comprehend it. I was like, I cannot just sit at a desk and do something I'm not passionate about. Like I need to be a writer. And I have picked up jobs here and there and everything because you have to do what you have to do. But I really wanted to give myself that head start, so I really did start committing to it. I kind of knocked out the first draft very quickly, but then I did hit some roadblocks. There was like times where I wouldn't write for months. There was times that I was really stuck on a scene, and no matter like how many times I rewrote it, it just never felt like it was working. And it took like a long, long time for everything to finally come together. And I feel like the best thing to do when you experience writer's block is to one, take a step back, because I feel like like when technology isn't working and you're sitting there pressing the button again and again and again, and you just feel your like patience like wearing away and your frustration rising. And when you get to that point, I feel like when you keep trying so hard and nothing's working and your frustration just builds, at that point you're not going to be able to get anything done. Like you might hit like it might be that one fluke time where you like hit the device out of anger and it automatically starts working. Like maybe you can come up and force that fix, but I feel like a lot of times forcing it is not going to help. So I feel like the first thing I would do is take a step back. And maybe like read some other books, watch some other TV shows, like kind of look at things from different angles, listen to music. Music is like a really big thing for my writing. Like a lot of my stories and everything has sometimes been inspired by music. And then come back, and if it's not working, then I typically find that the issue actually lays like more back in the story. So let's say
Mm,
I'm struggling with chapter 22. Usually the issue would lie in chapter 20 or chapter 21, and sometimes and I always say never permanently delete anything. I would just like maybe act like you deleted it and then start like a new document and continue writing from like chapter 20 or 21 and continue on and rewrite the whole thing. I feel like a lot of times you'll find that the problem lay with the way you executed something wasn't how it was meant to be, and it didn't align perfectly, and that was what stumped you. So those are like the two things: take a break and then look further back in the story because something along the path, like you took a wrong turn. One example is in the book, Thicket has to do some training to get her magic powers back, and initially she went to a farmhouse, and it's actually on the map because I'm actually going to go there in book two because I really like the farmhouse and I loved all the scenes there. And it's that farmhouse stayed in the book for a long time, but it really impacted a lot of things with the book because it took them like a couple hours to get there, and they were so secluded from all the other people in the town, and it just didn't align with the book very well. So when I made the decision to go back and cut it and try starting the training set, like the training arc, and a different place, then it was like this is all everything that I had an issue with is all coming together now. So that's kind of like the saying, you have to kill your darling sometimes, but I found a way to
yeah.
add it back in. So that's my very
Oh,
long-winded explanation for the writer's block.
that's so good. Yeah, because like I am trying to edit my own sort of like manuscript, I suppose, at the moment that I started back in like 2019, I think. And I'm having that same sort of issue where it's like I'm writing it and then I'm dropping it and then I'm picking it back up again and I'm dropping it. And it's like maybe it is like you said, something that's missing. And what I noticed is when I went back was I was a lot younger when I was writing it. So I was kind of just rushing through it, and I'm just like skipping out massive parts that then don't actually make much sense. So I'm like, no, I need to revisit it and go back rather than delete what I've got. I need to actually just go back and like add something, and then if I want to delete it afterwards, that's what I do. So going back to Curses of Lavender, you were talking about obviously you had the one book which was originally longer, and then you've cut it into two. And I know that you've said sort of you're going to be working on other stuff in the meantime. But will this stuff that you are sort of working on in the meantime, is that kind of stuff that you'll publish, or is it stuff that you'll sort of keep a hold of for a while and then maybe in the future publish?
If I can, I would like to try and publish it this year. Like, don't hold me to that because it took me 5 years to write this book, and while I'm hoping it did not take me 5 years to write another book, um, I don't want to like be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna publish it and then like disappoint you guys. So don't hold me to that. I'm giving myself a few months to figure out whether or not I can. But this next series that I'm working on, because I was in this world for 5 years, and I feel like one of the best things you can do is take a break and let yourself recharge. Because every time you
Mm,
write, you grow. And I feel like while I'm really excited to jump into book two, I feel like if I do that right now, I'm not going to allow myself room to grow, and I'm probably going to fall back into old habits because I did split it into two books, and a lot of the second book is already written because of that. Because what I did is I had this whole huge 200,000 long word book, and I cut 100,000 words, 100,000 words, and for like this one, I had to add stuff to the end to make it like into a full story, because you can't just split a book in half because it's going to end in the middle. So I had to add stuff to it to make it fit, or like make it more like a real structured story. And so I do the same for book two. I have to add on to the beginning, but a lot of the ending is the same, but there's a lot of plot points already that I'm kind of noticing holes.
mm,
And I feel like if I just jump in right now, I'm probably going to be too attached to everything I did before, and I'm not going to have enough space to look at it in an objective way. So I want to give myself time to make sure I'm doing book two justice, especially because now you guys are all like liking it, and I'm just like, oh, well, now if I do a bad job, then I'm gonna be making people sad. So I have to like make sure it's good. So I definitely need that time to make sure I can do a good job. And I also think that because I've never written a second book before, and I've never written like a finale before, so book two is going to be like a whole other thing, because I can write a first book, but I've never written a second book, and I've never written a last book. So I have to do both for book two. So I think I need a little bit more experience before I can do that. So like I said, I was jumping back and forth between a lot of ideas, and I had this one that was like my main story. Like it was initially going to be like the one I wanted as my debut. But it's too big of a story to do that. Like I literally have like 15,000 word backstories for every single character, and there's like all the entire series is like flushed out, and there's like two or three drafts written for book one. So I feel like it's already set up very nicely where I can just tackle it, and I feel like I've grown a lot with this book where I can then apply that to this book, but then in doing so I'll grow enough for book two. So again, it's kind of just giving myself space and time to figure out book two, but it is like a winter themed book, which is as much as I can say right now. So I would hope to maybe get it out sometime in the winter, because no one wants to read about winter vibes in the summer. So it would either be I publish it this year or I publish it next year. So hopefully I can, but it's more just me trying to give myself a break, and then maybe get another book out in the world as well. So
yeah.
I'm a rambler. I'm sorry. I'm like answering this very loud-winded.
No, it's okay. No, yeah, no, you are so right with that. I think taking a break is so worthwhile, especially with something of this sort of like caliber. I mean, I remember you approaching the sort of project and being like, "Oh, I'm kind of nervous about it," and then obviously you're just seeing it grow and grow and grow. And I do think that you just, like you were saying, even just with writer's block or anything in general, like just taking a step back and actually being like, "Yeah, I did that. I've done it, and now I can just take like a little step back just to sort of regain myself."
Mhm.
I think is also so worthwhile. And like you said, you're going to constantly grow as a writer. So the time that you sort of step back is also doing yourself a favor as well, because you're allowing this sort of space to grow within yourself as well. So you were saying about this sort of like duology, and I know you said that it's like your sort of book two, and that's the final book two. I know it wasn't originally supposed to be a duology, but do you think it will stay as a duology, or do you think that you might have to then end up making a third book, or do you want it to just stay just the two?
I would love to keep it a duology. I have some maybe ideas for some spin-off series, but I know that a lot of people have said my book is very fast-paced, and some people do wish it was slower. Um, and I could probably find a way to stretch it into 3 books if I had taken that into account with book one. But to be honest, I feel like writing is such like it it's so like it's like fragile. Like every word, every sentence, every chapter has to fit in this picture perfect way. And if you mess with it too much, you can ruin the whole experience. So there's like I know this book isn't perfect, but it's the best that I can do without disrupting the careful web that I have woven. And I feel like if I were to make it anything more than a duology, it would kind of ruin that. Like it'll ruin the pacing of it, it'll ruin like so I know like sometimes the third book is like the drag book because nothing really happens and it's like very slow and bogged down. And I feel like that's because maybe some people try and stretch it. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Like I love trilogies, but just for this book in particular, it was never even supposed to be a duology. And I can definitely see like in the ending, like I can see how some people would say like maybe it's a little too fast, maybe it doesn't feel like a true ending. And maybe that's because it was initially never supposed to be a duology. So, but the world just got too big that I wanted to stretch it. But I feel like stretching it anymore will just make it lose more of the core story that I had originally come up with. If that makes
Yeah,
any sense.
yeah, no, it definitely does. I agree with you. I think a lot of people try to stretch something out into more than it probably should be. So I think you're wise to kind of avoid that. And I do think that, like you said about spin-offs, I think that would be such a worthwhile thing to do if you wanted to in the future, because obviously you're so invested in this world already and so are the readers. So to have access to the world without then having to sort of add on a third book
Mhm.
in the main thicket story, I think is such like a good way around it
Mhm.
without having to like interrupt what you've already worked to structure so
Yeah,
well, I think.
yeah. Because there's so much of the world that I will never get to explore with Thicket. Because you have to understand that while the world is like this big, Thicket's only one person. And unless I'm taking you on a tour of the world where she goes to every place and tells you all the history, you're never going to
Mm,
see all of it through Thicket's eyes because that's not Thicket's journey. Thicket's journey is very aligned with her goal, which is to stop her sister and find her place and kind of grow into herself. And her goal isn't to learn about all the animals and to learn about all the places and to make sure she sightsees. Like that's Burn's goal. Like Burn wants to do all that. So maybe if I have a story with Burn, you guys can go on a tour with Burn or something. But Thicket, that's not her goal. Like her goal is not to sightsee. Her goal is to accomplish her goal. So because we're in her head and we see what she sees, there's no way I can, with her alone, visit everything in the world. Unless you want it to be like this thick of a book and have like some very boring middle parts. But I feel like if I give Bern a story and I give Elliot a story and I give Marcel a story, if I give her sister a story, I don't know. I feel like everybody will have a different perspective and will take you to a different part of the world. And you have to understand too, is a lot of different people see the world in different ways. Like I said, Bern is gonna love to travel. So maybe while Thicket is walking along and she's missing the sights around her because she's so in her head and like, oh my gosh, like I almost just died, like everything's happening. Bern's gonna be like, oh, pretty bird, or like, whoa, waterfall. So like different characters had different points of views as well. And they're gonna take the world in a different way, as everybody does. So I feel like if you have the ability to do like those other stories, even if they're only like a short story, I think it is really fun way to expand upon the world without kind of info dumping a single character.
yeah, and I feel like the way that you've written the characters, they feel very much like your friends. Like when I read through the book, I was so sort of shocked at how quickly I grew to sort of love every single character, and how even though they were different, you felt like they all sort of melded together like really well and like it worked really well. I just wanted to ask, like, were the characters sort of like based on yourself, like aspects of yourself, your friends, or was it literally just like you created these characters for the story that they're in?
I think that a lot of times, I'm gonna answer the question, but it might not sound like it for a second. I feel like a lot of times characters kind of come as they want to be. Like you can try and force them down a certain path, but in the end, you'll know when a character's voice starts to hit you, and they tell you themselves. Like you can't control them. Like Thicket, when I first wanted to write her, she was supposed to be one of those like instantly batty, sassy princesses. And while I'm a very anxious person, I do feel like a lot of my own internal struggles at the time seeped into her, and she eventually became like my way to cope as well. I wouldn't say I based it off her. I just feel like she grew into the kind of person that was very similar to myself, but I didn't try and base her off that. And I feel like everyone writes based off experience. So I'm sure there's like a lot of traits from people. Like the boys are really similar to my husband. Like he has like the very sassy, quick-witted side of Marcel, but he's also very, very sweet, like Alien. So I feel like there's definitely some attributes that of people that snuck in to them, but I feel like at the end of the day, you can try and force a character down a certain path. Like you can set out to say like, I want to write a character that's exactly like my husband, but watch them become the exact opposite, because the characters, like if you, I guess if you do your job, quote unquote, right, because there's no right or wrong to do writing, but in my mind, if I allow my characters to come to life in a natural way, because you can't force people to walk a certain life. Like you can't expect people to do exactly what you want them to. And if characters are really brought to life, then they're not going to do what you want them to do either, because they're at that point their own minds. So they're going to kind of come about in their own ways. So I do feel like some attributes are from people in my own life, but I feel like at the end of the day, they really became their own people. So I think maybe using traits from people was like a stepping stone to finding out who they truly are, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. Did you find that sort of in this process that you sort of rewrote a character sort of drastically, or did you find that kind of it all came about quite naturally?
It was very hard. Actually, I really struggled, and that's part of the reason why the series I'm about to work on was really, really hard for me, and it was like too big, is because while Curse of Lavender is told from Thicket's point of view only, the other series I'm working on is going to be told from a whole cast of characters. There's at least 3 or 4 like main points of views. So one thing I struggled with is when you're writing like the character, like the main character, I feel like the author kind of, at least for me, I really tend to resonate with the main character the most, because they're the main character. Like they're the one I spend the most time with. Like it's their story. And while I also want to invest time in the side characters, they're the side characters. I invest time in the main character first, and then they start to kind of mold around the main character. And then eventually they kind of come to life in their own way, where they are their own main characters as well. But they start off as supporting characters. So I feel like I really struggled early on in my writing like career, I guess, to think outside of the main character. Um, and initially all the characters, their only goals were to like support Thicket, but that's not like realistic. Like your friends' lives do not revolve around you. Like you can be having a crisis and they're going to be there for you, but they have their own problems and their own crises and their own goals. And so I feel like being able to kind of see that is yeah, I feel like that's something I struggled with a lot, is like learning how to make my side characters more than just revolve around the main character. And initially when they revolved around the main character, they had some different personalities, but again, because they weren't even real characters at that point, they were just there to like support the main character. But then once I started giving them a lot more time and attention, then they started to shape up into their own selves. I think Lada's personality is like was kind of always set in stone. She's she's been through a lot. Like she's like really, really wise, but trapped in like a 16-year-old body. So she's quiet, observant. She's like kind of very realistic, and just I don't know. She's just I don't know. I feel like she's the only one of all of them that kind of has her life put together. Byrne is kind of like really crazy and like a wild card, but she's also like she has her own problems that she buries deep within, but she really does try and support everyone else around her. Marcel was always kind of grumpy looking back at old drafts, but him and Thicket's relationship and her Thicket, Ellie, and Marcel's relationship was probably the hardest one for me to get, because the story started out very differently than how it is now, and I cannot say for spoilers, but who the characters are now has come from drafts and drafts and drafts, and I didn't even nail Alien until the very end. Because I felt like he kept falling into the stereotypical like arrogant prince, because that's how a lot of princes are, but he's not that. And it took me a little bit to actually like delve into his like backstory. And I think one of the questions that really helped me kind of change him from maybe being like an arrogant prince to being like the sweetie he is now, is like I took into account like this is Sleeping Beauty's story of how she saves herself, but I feel like a lot of men, like their main source of pride sometimes is being able to be the one who saves the day. So how is that going to affect a character like Elian, who wants to be the one to save the day, but is incapable of doing it? So that really helped me flip his personality around and give him hopefully a lot more depth than he initially had. And then Marcel, he always kind of had, with like Piranha and Redfire, he's always been kind of dealt awful hands. So he was always kind of there, but initially he was more grumpy. But his like quick wittedness and like, I don't know, like brutally honest self. I'm not like, I'm very brutally honest, but I'm not quick-witted, and I try to be brutally honest in a nice way. He does not care about being nice. So in order to write a character who's not nice to people was like really hard for me. So he again went through several drafts, and there's actually a few drafts where I had to make him and Thicket almost enemies in order to get the level of banter they have now, because I was just incapable of making a character who's not nice. So I had to like make him super mean to her. Like they literally fought every single chapter. Like there's like one big fight in the book, but they literally had that almost like every few chapters. And I was like, this is too much arguing. So there's definitely a lot of like things that I sometimes had to write in order to change their personality. So yeah, they definitely did change a lot as I wrote them. Sorry, I'm not good at answering
It's
short
all right.
questions.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Sort of out of all of the cast of characters then that you've sort of like rewritten and written and got to know, who do you think your friend would be? Like out of all the
Friend?
cast, your friend, yeah.
I would say me and Thick would probably get along very well because we're very similar, but I don't think we'd be good for each other because we would not give each other good habits. We would just be like giving into our anxious selves a lot more. I would say I would love a friend like Bern. I feel like Bern kind of encompasses all the support I've gotten from all of my friends. So honestly, I feel like she's like the ideal best friend. Or Lotta, because she'll probably keep my head cool. So
Yeah, I was the same when I sort of was writing up these questions. I was like, who would I have? I was like, yeah, definitely Burn, I think would
yeah.
be mine. Definitely. And sort of like, I suppose my next question is sort of related to the friend aspect, but also the sort of like dream world aspect. If you were to wake up from your dream in this sort of like fantasy world, obviously you'd freak out.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of a given. But like, if you were to talk to any of them about it, who would you want for you to like wake up to? Like, who would you want them to be there, if you know what I mean?
I would say maybe Caspian. I know we haven't talked about him very much. He's kind of like the old mentor type, but I feel like he's a lot like my mom in the terms like they have very good advice and they're very level-headed. But they can, I feel like a lot of the younger characters, because they are younger, like some of them, like the kid's like on the older side of the YA, but she's still like younger and she's still like she's been traumatized her whole life. So she's an act her age sometimes because she's like so distraught. But I feel like there's like a maturity about Caspian where he would be able to take a step back and look at everything objectively without taking his own feelings into account. And he can just listen to my freak out and then give me some very reassuring words in a very calm way that makes me think about things differently. Versus like even talking to Bern about it, well, she knows the right thing to say. She's also like, I don't know. I just feel like the way sometimes like mentors or people we really look up to, they just word things, even if like our friend can say the exact same thing, it just sounds better coming from like someone who's like a mentor or something to us. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I would say kind of like how Caspian was there for Thicket, I would want someone like my mom or like my dad or like someone who's like very level-headed to kind of have it come from them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but Caspian really reminded me of Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's that kind of like tutor guardian role of like an older person. They really gave me that vibes. And if you haven't watched it, though, I'm sorry for making a reference that you don't understand.
No,
But
you're
it's that
good. My mom's been nagging me to watch it for years, so
yeah,
she'd appreciate it.
yeah. I know that like obviously this sort of world is inspired by Sleeping Beauty and sort of retellings and mythology, but did you have any other sort of like inspirations, and what kind of inspirations or books or authors sort of inspire you and sort of shape you as a writer?
I mentioned Marissa Meyer before. She's like probably one of my all-time favorite authors, the one who really got me into like it's funny. Do not do this. Like any writers out there, please do not do this. But I would literally take it to the extreme. Like, I admired her so much. I was like, whatever she writes is like the epitome of writing. I was like, I must do what she did. And so I would literally, not for this book, but for other books, I'd be like, okay, her first chapter is 5 pages long. So therefore, my first chapter must be 5 pages long. And that's like the extent I went to make it, because I idolized her so much. And I eventually found my own writing style, but she did play such a pivotal role in my writing process and writing style that I cannot like say enough good things about her. I also love Stephanie Garber. I love her lush atmospheric writing, and I know some people don't like that, but as a person who can't visualize in my head, I really appreciate it because I sometimes struggle with descriptions what I'm reading because I can't visualize in my head. So unless it makes sense to me, I can't comprehend. And sometimes I find myself skimming to get to like the dialogue, which I can understand. So I really liked her like lush atmospheric writing because even though I can't visualize it in my head, I can visualize the feeling of like the like I guess like when you go to a certain place, it gives off a certain vibe and you can kind of feel that by looking at it. But even though I can't see it, her writing gives me the same impression as if I'm there. So I think that that also played a big part in my writing because again, I'm writing a world that I cannot see in my head, but I can like see it through like the rhythm of how I shape the words and like inspiration from like Pinterest and everything. But she was really influential. And then I don't talk about this very much, but Sleeping Beauty I think originated in France, and so I base a lot of things off like French like architecture. I forget which place when we were doing my map. I actually think the map in the book looks. I think we based it off like France. I think it actually looks like kind of like France or
Mm,
something. And then there was one city, I think it's called Province, because in book two we're
yeah.
gonna go there, but there's a town, it's like a fishing village, and it's kind of like the water and like all the houses on like the side of the water, and there's like boats and everything. And then there's like lavender fields and like so I was like, this is a lot like I think Province. So I base a lot of things off that, and I also base a lot of things off French mythology. So there's like something in book two that's referenced in book one a little bit called the Soul Seeker, and that horse is actually from a French myth. So there's like a lot of things that I took from French mythology as well and put it in here. So yeah, those are kind of some external references that kind of all went into this book.
I find that so interesting that you say that you're not a very like visual person like when you're reading, because when I read this book, I am sort of lucky enough that I am a visual reader. But it felt like you were sort of so in tune with this sort of world, and the way that you describe it, it's so descriptive and vivid. Like you can so easily picture it, and like the writing itself is like beautiful in itself, like, and the way that you manage to create these worlds without actually being able to see it, I think is actually such a talent in itself.
I
Because
honestly feel like, yeah, it's because I couldn't see it that it's so lush because I was like, I have to feel like some kind of way about it. So yeah.
yeah, God, that is really interesting actually. And I was like thinking about it because wow, yeah, that's crazy. But out of all the sort of worlds, like I know obviously we can't talk about book two, it's not even out yet and no spoilers, but like out of all the worlds so far that like we know of, what would be the one that you would sort of like want to be in? What land would you like to live in if you could live in one?
That's a good. I would say like I feel like Dindria without her sister having ruined it. But I would love to spend some time in Deanery just because my family and I used to travel a lot when I was a kid, and we would go to like we went to Asia a lot, and we would go to like night markets like in Taiwan. Like Taiwan's probably like one of my favorite places. The bubble tea, the night markets, like I don't know, it's just so I just love it there. I have really fond memories, and so I wanted to kind of capture that. So I kind of threw like a lot of my favorite tourist things in Deanery because they kind of went to Deanery as like a like Burn thought it was a tourist visit, but it was like for like reasons that enhance the plot and help them beat the big bad and everything. But I would say I probably want to like make my home base in like Avendria, but I would probably love to visit Deanery as well, just because I've put so many of my fond childhood memories in there. Except for the people, they're not very nice.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I suppose that goes hand in hand with being friends with Bern, is that you'd like go and travel places and stuff
yes,
like that.
yes.
So yeah. But that yeah, I think I'd probably agree with you to be honest, because when you sent out the Enigma quiz, it asked that question, And I was like, that's actually such a good question, but I'd like to ask you that question.
Mm.
And I think I answered the exact same when I did the questionnaire. But speaking of enumas, what would yours be?
I would say probably a kiwi because me and Thinking are so similar. But yeah, I actually am making my little brother. He's really good at coding. He's actually helping me make like an official Enuma quiz that should hopefully like be more accurate than Google Forms. So yeah, I want to take it like that and see what I actually get. But yeah, so I would probably say right as of right now, kiwi.
Yeah, I think I put the same as well. When I got my quiz results back, I think I also got kiwi. So I think we're both very similar, like in that
Yeah.
sort of aspect. But sort of, how did you come about with this sort of idea of like the sort of enumas? Like, I know obviously, fairy tales sort of have like the sort of magical creatures and stuff like that. But how did you sort of like navigate this in your story?
I actually really like this question because the answer is really funny. So, when I was initially like planning this, I wanted Thicket's sister to be like completely isolated. Like she is such a bad person that she literally made every single human in like the entirety of Vindria like not want to work with her. So I was like, if she has no humans to fight on her behalf, what does she have left? And all I thought was animals. And I actually rewatched the Sleeping Beauty movie, and her army is an army of animals. And again, I didn't really watch the movie that much, so I was like, I am inadvertently a genius. But just it's kind of like with the curse world being our world. I just could not imagine being cursed in a fantasy world because what's the curse in that? I feel like the real curse is a land without magic, which is our world. And then say with her sister, I was like, no human's gonna want to work with her, so she's gonna be left with the animals. And of course she has to find a way to control them and everything. And because I had this idea of like our world being like a land without magic, and then the real world being like the land with magic, I was kind of like there's going to be some kind of alterations with that. And I was like, I want everything to have magic, including animals, because I don't know, just again in my head this is like my like self-conscious like overthinking coming into play. But I was like kind of really insecure about the idea of her sister having animals at first, just because I was like, I don't know, people are gonna like laugh and make fun of it and think it's stupid. So I was like, I need to get them some kind of like magic to like make them seem like actually formidable foes. Because a lot of like Lord of the Rings, like they have like animal armies, but they're like more monsters. And so that's kind of where the idea of like the more monster of like than regular like cute little fluffy animals. Because well, the animals like are mistreated by Thicket's sister. Like a lot of them are like, I don't know, like they kind of have their own like power in the world, and they're not as helpless as our animals, and they can like be really scary sometimes with the stuff that they can do. And there's like a darker side to it, where it's like I feel like in our world humans dominate, but I feel like in that world it's either even, if not humans are lower on the totem pole. So that's kind of what came into play and started like the whole animals have magic thing. And initially in earlier drafts, no one knew animals had magic. And that was like the secret that Thicket discovered in like in the book. You know the secret she discovers now, but so initially it wasn't the whole other secret that is a spoiler. It was
Yeah.
that animals have magic in general. And but one thing that I didn't like about that in those early drafts was you can't see any of the cool. Like I literally came up with so many cool animal abilities, and if no one knows that animals have magic, then no one will ever be able to see those cool animal abilities. And so I was like, I can't do that because I was really proud of some of the things that I came up with. And again, there's so many things that I would never be able to put into the book, which is where the spinoffs might come into play. But so I was like, okay, people will know animals have magic, and I found the other surprise that she has to discover. Um, uh be- because like again like there's so many animals in the world, it'd be really hard for humans to know all the powers and everything. So I was like, okay, they'll know some. But then another thing that I thought too is, okay, because her sister took all the animals from this world, while even though humans know animals will have magic, we'll never get to see any of them because they're not in Vindria, and her sister has them all like locked in her castle and everything. So then I was like, oh, no one can still see the cool powers of the animals while they're in Thicket's mind, because she's not gonna, her story is not gonna take place in a world that's like perfect. So the animals won't come back till like the end of book two, and like later drafts. So I was like, man, like I gotta show off these animals more. So I think when I was essentially doing some of like the like magic powers, because I wanted animals to play like such a big part, I was like, ooh, what if I do something like kind of the spirit animal quizzes where like everyone has like an animal companion, and whatever animal suits your personality best is then going to kind of enhance your magic. And I thought that was super cute. And it was my own kind of slight Pokemon reference. And I actually made like a slight Pokemon reference in here. 'Cause I was trying to take some real world stuff and put it in here. So if Pokemon exists in our world, then that's like the Pokemon version in the book, I guess. And I think it makes like a little reference, and she is like, "What do you do? Catch them or something?" And Caspian's like, "No." So I don't know if anyone caught that, but
Yeah.
so yeah, it was just my way of trying to show up in a little bit more, and then just kind of make them a bigger part of the world. So yeah, I guess again, very long-winded explanation because they didn't exist until like 4 or 5 drafts into the book. So
That's really interesting because I feel like the sort of magic system in the book is very unique. And I know you go into like sort of like the colors of flames, which I'll ask you about in a minute, but like the sort of things that you expand on in just book one, because I know obviously there'll be other stuff that comes up in book two. Um, I feel like it's so fleshed out considering it was sort of not a last minute thing, but sort of like something that you added on later on. Um, I think that's such an interesting point to make. And so, like I said about the sort of flames, how did you sort of come up with this sort of like idea and visual of like power and a magic system? How did you sort of come up with it, I suppose?
I think I don't know. I think what happened, it's been so long since I've like written some of these foundation things that I don't even know how it came up. I can only like guess at whatever my mind was thinking at the time. But what I think happened was this story is different in a way where like Thicket is technically the most overpowered person in the world. She has the strongest fire in the world, or the strongest magic in the world. But the thing I wanted to play on is you can have all the power in the world, but if you don't believe in yourself, then are you truly powerful, or do you feel powerless? And kind of how that plays into your capabilities. And so I wanted there to be this dynamic, and I kind of wanted there to be a way, like I guess I need to explain why she's so powerful. And so then I had the whole history with like her kingdom and everything. And then I think I had the idea to do like tiers, and I actually didn't realize until like a year or two ago that another like anime Solo Leveling has a similar idea where like people are born with like a certain level and you can't like move up from there. um and I don't know how I came up with that idea. Maybe it was to make, maybe it was to kind of explain why people couldn't be as powerful as she was, I guess. I don't know. Again, it's been so long since I've written it, but I also wanted there to be some kind of like balance as well. But when I was younger, I really, really liked like fire. Like I don't know, it was just like the element that I thought was like, I don't know, the cool, like the coolest, or like the one in like all the like personality quizzes, it'd be like, which element do you like the most? I'd be like fire. So I really kind of saw Thicket having some kind of fire, and if all their strengths are limited by like what they're born as, then I was like, well, how do they know? And one thing I thought about is because it's not actually the color of your fire that determines your magic. It's you're born with a certain magic level, and then if you use an element like fire, it feeds from both your. It's kind of a mix between a spell and enchantment. Like it takes from the environment, but I don't think fire is like a natural thing. Like you're not just gonna walk into a forest and see fire, like just sitting there like you would see water. Something has to happen to make fire. So I was like, okay, you have to provide your own magical energy to like have like the spark, and then you can draw upon everything else to make it like bigger. So because it relies on your magical energy, it would the color of it will be determined on how much magical energy you have. And so then it became, that's how people could tell what, like if they were born as like weaker or stronger. I think that's how that kind of
Yeah.
came about, is like the way to determine it.
Yeah, I think that's so, like I said, interesting because the sort of dynamic and the sort of depictions of women with power in literature always tends to be like she's either really weak or she's really strong, and then you get a lot of people criticizing her for being strong and say that she's, I think they call it like a Mary Sue, where she can just get over everything. But it's like there doesn't really tend to be that sort of critique if it's a man. So I think that the sort of balancing out of her being strong and this kind of insecurity and the way that you analyze that throughout the book, I think is so interesting, because it could just be an analogy that obviously we don't, unfortunately, live in a fantasy world. So this sort of like having strength but not believing in it is an analogy in of itself of sort of your own inner strength. And I sort of found great comfort in a story like that, where that's kind of depicted in this fantasy realm, but it still draws very heavily from things that people struggle with in real life. So yeah, I thought that that was really interesting, and kind of, if I were younger, I mean, I know obviously I enjoyed it now, but if I were younger and this kind of book was out when I was younger, I think it honestly would have become like a hyperfixation. I'd have been like, oh my god, I could be sad and be like thicket. Like, how cool is that? You know,
Oh.
do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And sort of like drawing to a close, I suppose. Last sort of questions. Were there any unexpected sort of reactions from the readers, like ARC readers, sort of readers now that the book is released? Any sort of like unexpected reactions that you sort of saw?
Yeah, so I would say that I guess this is like, I don't know if this is like shows how like insecure I can get sometimes, but I know that my book's a little controversial. I know that it's not like a lot of the other books out there, where there's like, again, like the heroine's like very tough. Like I was really worried people would be like, think it's too whiny, and I was really worried that like the animals would seem like would be like silly, or like that their friendship is like I don't know, like I was like thinking my book wasn't like cool. It was like more childish, and I was like, and I feel like, again, I wrote it for like older middle school, high school students, because that's like the young adult age range, and I wanted people who were like maybe bullied or very insecure in high school, or like it can apply to anyone of all ages, but like you have to narrow down like one like age range, and that age range was like young adults. So I was like, it'll appeal to them, but then also there's like all the Sarah J. Maas books and everything, and all the casts are like super powerful, and like everything's like so serious, and like they're not like, ooh, animals and like a bunch of, I don't know. So I just got really insecure about it, and I was like, people are gonna think it's silly, and they're gonna read it and be like, what did I sign up for? But then people like, I feel like the world building was probably the one thing I was the most insecure about, because again, like I was like, it's so silly, like who's gonna care about this? And then everyone's like, oh my goodness, I love the world. But like if I get like one thing of praise for anything in any of my reviews, like it's about the world building. And I'm just like, really? Like I thought you guys were gonna think it's stupid. I was like really insecure about that. So for how many people love the world building, it like really made me happy, because that's probably the thing I struggled with the most. It was like the most insecure about. And then I really thought it was funny too that all the reactions from Marcel, like he they could just even see him as a love interest. Like, and she is like literally like there. She's just like, you're some annoying guy who keeps getting mad at me for no reason. And Elian's over here being so sweet, and everyone's like, no, Elian, you're suspicious. I'm gonna go with this guy, and I'm like, why? It just makes me laugh. Like, and you guys started choosing teams and everything, and I've been like, I'm like, if you guys are gonna choose teams, like I'm gonna embrace it. As you can see, the guys. So yeah, I just thought that was hilarious. Even my beta readers, they were like, oh, everyone. I'm really happy that people do like Elian, because um I've heard really bad things about love triangles, and I didn't want people to be like, oh, I know who she's gonna end up with, and then like kind of like not like the other guy. And I did not want either character to be disliked. I did not want like, again, like Thicket doesn't see Marcel's an option. Like I didn't want like anything to be obvious. And I didn't want people to like criticize anything. And I wanted both boys to stand on their own, and have their own merit. So I'm really glad that people do like Elian, even though there's suspicious of him. Like people, even if they're like Team Marcel, they still love Elian, which I'm really grateful for, because I did not want him to become the hated trope. And I do not want to go the route of like the typical like one of the people gets like really awful, and then like the other choice is like the obvious choice. Like I want them at the end of the day, at the end of both books, to still be their own good, sweet person and still have their likable characteristics. So fingers crossed for that. But people's reaction to Marcel was absolutely hilarious. I'll say that.
I have to say, I was like, I think a part of it's definitely like Sarah J. Maas's and these other authors' fault, where you kind of get to know this character and they're really sweet, and then all of a sudden, they're just really suddenly horrible. And I think you're so right about that. Like, there's these love triangles where it then becomes so obvious who they're going to end up with, and that kind of ruins the tension a little bit. Whereas I feel like this book, either way, whoever she ends up with, even though obviously T. Marcel, um, I feel like either way I'd be happy, because like you're right, like Elian is just a cutie like in of itself. And like the whole thing with the glasses and everything, like, oh, I was just thinking about it this morning. I was like, it's so cute. Like I can't. But yeah, no, you are right. Like I think having that balance and having that sort of like not openness, but the sort of ability to be able to create two characters that are very lovable and still be very different is like such a talent on your half, to be able to create these very vastly different characters that's, you know, in a love triangle, but you don't hate either of them. You'd actually be happy if either of them ended up with her, sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's my kind of take on it.
Yay.
Yeah. But was there sort of anything else that you wanted to add before like I let you sort of wrap everything up?
I guess just if anyone's watching this, thank you for watching. And then if you guys do end up picking up my book, thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's support. And yeah, I hope that at the very least you enjoy it. But again, no pressure. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I also hope, like a step above that, that you find some kind of resonance with Thicket and her journey, and know that you are awesome no matter who you are, or yeah, just you're awesome, and thank you.
No worries. And sort of like on just like a very final thing about sort of being self-published, how did you sort of navigate that? Was it stressful? And were there sort of like things that popped up that you were unexpecting?
I actually like I've talked to so many indie authors, and there's so many people who are struggling with it, that I'm actually wanting to make like some kind of like blog series or something to like help, because I need the guide, because it was super hard. Like I ordered like 12 proof copies trying to nail down certain things, and then of course some things ended up going wrong at the end. So yeah, there is just it's really hard, one, to do it yourself, if it's because self-publishing costs a lot of money. Like you have to buy the ISBNs, you have to buy the proof copies, you have to buy you have to pay for the cover artist. You have to get people to actually like recognize you in your writing. You have to get people to want to buy the book. In order to do that, sometimes you have to do promoting things, and you can only promote so much without annoying people. So then you want to invest in character art, and if you want to invest in like really good character art, it costs a lot of money. And then you also have to like format the book, so I paid for like a thing that helped me format it. I needed like Canva to do my promotions. I needed what's it called? I need a way to distribute the book, so I got like book funnel. I needed to do giveaways. I needed to do like there's so many expenses that you don't even realize. Like I have like a running list that I'm trying to keep track of to like see whether or not I covered all my expenses. And I'm not in the negatives for the book. So even just expenses alone, it's a lot. And even if you don't even do like the full expenses, there's still a lot of effort that goes into it. Like you have to figure out what kind of size you want. You have to like figure out like the font. You have to figure out like how you want to structure the book. You have to figure out I don't even know, like there's there's so many things that go into the book that I can't even list on top of my head right now. but I think the number one thing that I struggle with the most is the sizing of the book. And one thing that kind of makes me a little frustrated is all indie sizes are different than traditionally published sizes. So I bought so many copies trying to find the perfect match. And I think the only match I found was for the paperback, which kind of matches some of the traditionally published paperbacks, but none of the hardcovers fit. It just like, yeah, there's so many hurdles you have to come across. And a lot of the sites you have to go through, because they're the only sites you can use, sometimes they're kind of problematic because they know you have to use them, so the customer
Mm.
service isn't always the best. So yeah, I would say being an indie author is not for the faint of heart, but I do, because I was initially wanting to go the traditionally published route, but getting an agent is really, really hard, and breaking into the publishing industry is really, really hard. And I guess in my mind, I was like, I could wait like another year or two for someone to just keep rejecting me, or I can do it myself and have full creative liberty. And I really liked having the autonomy to make my book in my vision. But again, you had to make so many decisions, and there's a lot writing on it. And yeah, I cannot say how hard it was and how many things went wrong. But I think at the end of the day, there's a really good support system. I think like the readers and everything, I love being able to get really close with the readers, and I feel like you can't do that with traditional publishing. So there, neither is right or wrong, but I definitely think that it's hard, but there's a really good support system out there, and all indie authors are super nice. So reach out to any one of them, and they're going to help you out. So again, I'm not good at entering small, but
It's okay.
that's like my take.
Yeah, I think you answered well, and you've done it. Like
I don't know
you
how.
are published. You did it. So, you should give yourself a pat on the back for that one, because it's been like such a incredible journey, and obviously sort of permanent street team member here. So like I get to have like the sort of insights for like the next book and sort of work alongside you. And obviously it's been an honor to work with you for this book. But I am aware that there's a release event coming up soon, which if you would like to talk about, you can now take the opportunity to talk about.
Yeah, so if anyone's in Northern Virginia, it's gonna be in Alexandria. So if anyone's like nearby that, or like want to be, if you like, I'm not saying you have to fly out because flights are expensive, but hey, if you wanted to, like, I'd love to see you. So it's open. I think we have, last time I checked, there's about like 5 tickets left, and there's probably less now because that was like a week or two ago. But so basically I'm gonna be joined by Gretchen Powell Fox, or yeah, I think yeah, the author of Smoke and Scar, and we're gonna be doing like a little author chat, and then we're both gonna be signing some books, and I'm gonna have these guys there to take pictures with. I'm gonna have the enigma quiz I mentioned I was working on. I'm gonna try and have like some fun activities, maybe a little giveaway. I kind of want to try and do like cupcakes where like if you bite inside, you can see your color of fire. So I just really want to like throw all the fun details of the world into the event and just make it a grand time, because it'll be my first author event. And I just want to make it as special for you guys as it will be for me. So yeah, if anyone can stop by, I would love to meet you guys. If not, I think we're going to try and live stream the event. So yeah, that's yeah, I'm gonna be posting a little bit more about that this week. It's on Wednesday, April 2nd. So yeah.
How fun is that? That sounds amazing. I wish I could be there, but UK girly cannot be, alas. But
I'd
yeah,
love to go to the UK one day though, so
yeah,
who knows?
yeah, yeah, literally meet up. But yeah, so I just sort of like to close this off by saying, obviously, like, thank you for the opportunity, to sort of work alongside you. Sort of thank you for creating this world, and for sort of, I suppose, having the bravery and actually sticking out and publishing it, because from what you were saying, like, that obviously it's an expense, but it's time consuming and sort of quite hard work to actually get even just the motivation to do that sort of stuff. So sort of like, well done for doing it. Obviously, congratulations again. And it's sort of, like I said, been an honor to sort of work along beside you and to even just have this chat just now. So yeah, thank you for sort of presenting the opportunity and sort of allowing me to interview you for this, and for also just letting me be part of the street team. It's been a great honor.
Well, thank you for like Thank you for you wanting to join. Like I told you last time, you're like one of the first people to believe in me and my story, and that means a lot. And you've been such a great rock and everything for this whole journey. So I really, really appreciate you and all my other team members. And yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I love talking about writing and about books and everything. So I had a lot of fun. So thank you for reaching out and inviting me.